Okay, my outstanding friends, we are going to go back a little over a year ago. I think it was before they returned the samples from Bennu, or right exactly at that time, and I said it's going to be from a heart. That's a heart. However, I was confused about the actual heart itself. I showed Psyche, which is a heart, and I said it was Bennu. I was wrong. I had just started to investigate it at this point in time. I will show you it is still a heart. There's no question about that. This is what I pointed to as to a heart, which it is, and this I pointed to as Bennu, but it is actually Psyche. Now let me show you that real quickly, and then I'm going to show you the video that I actually recorded over a year ago, and it's quite long. So, it's 49 minutes long. So this right up front, I'm going to show you that it is a heart, and they have it back here on Earth, the actual muscle from it, which I show that as well. So now it's completely shown and proven. It's time to deal with what we actually have here on Earth. Okay, so this just backs up my claim. Now, again, I made a mistake. I was pointing to this saying it was Bennu. Well, this is actually Psyche, and it's huge, 140 miles across. It has valves coming out of it, these are the vein valves. These are tubes. That's a tube. That's a tube. This is the tendon that holds the muscle. These are the valves. Another one here. Exactly the same as a heart. All right, so I showed this, which is a heart, and that's the plumbing comes off right here. I explained the whole thing, and I've learned a lot since I did that video, but this is the actual muscle sarcomeres. These are the muscles, and this is the phosphate surprise, which is the phospholipid membranes, and that's exactly what they found when they came back. This is the sample they came back with. Phospholipid membranes, one on each side of the sarcomeres. Membrane, sarcomere. Membrane, sarcomeres. Sarcomeres. And this is exactly what they are. This is from a heart attack victim on Earth. This is sarcomeres. And it is from a heart. And this is the actual Bennu. These are the heart valves. It is a heart. There's no question about that. This is the big one, I believe, right here. This is a little more gritty, and it's only a third of a mile across. It's not that big compared to what other things in space are, that like this, 140 miles across. And that's a heart. The colors of the blood and everything, they went right up there. This is not some artist rendition. This is basically a picture of it, probably with a 2D using also colorization. 2D does a fabulous job because you pick up every little nuance of everything, and then it puts it together, and you can see all the different shadows and patterns and structures of what you're looking at. It's 2D is absolutely fabulous. I have my stuff done with 2D, absolutely fabulous. The things you can see that you would never have seen without doing it under a 2D. So we're going to get into the actual video that I did when this was coming back to Earth, or just after it arrived. It hadn't been opened yet, so I didn't know about the muscle. At that point, I just was making claims about the chemistry, and I showed all the blood analysis. I remember doing this. I went very, very deep detail. And today, over a year later, and I was just on with the NASA live, and I said, it's a heart, will you please look at the sarcomeres? And they blocked me. So these things are not open for discussion, although I was a little aggressive, I must admit. But I need to be heard. We need to be heard. We're spending billions of dollars to do this, and they can't accept the truth. If you can't see what's in front of your face, then you shouldn't be the one looking. Je comprends? If you cannot open your eyes to truth, you should not be doing that job. You shouldn't be there. You know, they're saying, oh, Musk and Trump, they're just crazy. Well, there's a lot of people that are not doing their job. I don't think you should just blanket throw everybody out in the street. but we should at least get something for our money. All right, that's a whole other issue. All right, so all I want is truth, and I am showing truth, and it's still rejected by everybody so far. I can't get through to anybody, not a single one. As soon as you come with something that upsets the apple cart, they just don't let you come around. So if you don't help, it's never going to be seen. We'll just keep spending billions of dollars just for nothing. And we could be maybe even getting free energy. I'm showing that we can accelerate light. I got so much information about this. If we could put that in a little tiny box, carry it around, and have all the energy you'd ever need. I'm pretty sure. And I show this too. And I have videos showing exactly how that would work. All right, so the new school is going to address everything, but why shouldn't we get free energy? If we can create these white showers, which are electron showers, they're supposed to increase the energy, increase it by thousands of times, literally. So if you could put it in here using 1 watt, you get 1,000 watts out. Whatever, you get a ton of energy out of here. And all you want is the white. And we could separate it just by putting it through the Venturi. Now, if this could do, we would know within a week if this would work. If we had somebody that had a little resources. I can't do this. I've shown this is not a problem to accelerate the light and to separate the white from the black. That is already done. Somebody has to engineer it and look at it and say, yeah, we can actually use that energy. We can grab that before it recombines. Otherwise, it just comes back to the black and it just turns back into light again. We need to get it before it gets back to the black and then put our device right in the middle. So it's here. To get it back to the black, it's got to go through the device. And energy, electricity, as it goes through you, explodes you. That's the kind of electricity we're talking about right here. This is not just heat. This is actual raw electricity, like lightning, like static, like raw electricity. It will go through you and explode you. If you funnel that down through something, you're going to have a good, it's got to be engineered correctly, and so somebody doesn't get hurt, because this could be just staggering amount of energy. All right, let's get started with the Bennu. But I'm going to tell you, everything's got to be looked at, and this is just part of it. Okay, my outstanding friends, Roger once again. Today is a day for me that is like Christmas on steroids. And why? Because they are returning a sample from an asteroid in space. It's called Asteroid Bennu. All right, Bennu is the name. I don't know why they selected that. There's some big thing about it. But they have a sample that's going to be returning this morning within a couple of hours. And I know what's going to be in that sample because I have studied Bennu, and I have studied Psyche and Umaru and Comet 67P, and I have a variety of meteorites here that we will be looking at in a microscope. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is Bennu. All right, Asteroid Bennu's surprising surface. They went down and they grabbed a whole bunch of stuff, not much, a few ounces of stuff. But I know what it's going to be. There's no question what it's going to be. And I have the exact same thing here in my shop, only it's small compared to Bennu. Bennu's huge, absolutely huge. It's taller, it's round, but it's taller than the Empire State Building. So this is a big thing, and there is a lot of big things in space, and you won't believe what they are until you examine the evidence. So don't just, the guy's crazy. You need to examine the evidence. And I can tell you right now, the chemistry of what they have got in their little capsule. If we get it back here to Earth and examine it, and plus there's two, I believe the Japanese it was, that you already have two of them back here that could easily be examined for what I'm saying. But this one specifically, I know where they took, I know exactly what this is, this little crater here where they landed. And they said if they had touched down, they would have sunk right down into it. And it's because it's nothing but particulates. And I will tell you what those particulates are made of right now. And I'm going to show you a whole batch of meteorites. And we're going to examine them in detail. And my claims are outrageous, but once you see the evidence, I don't think you're going to say they're outrageous. I think you're going to say, that makes sense. Now, everybody wants to know the origin of the universe, the origin of the solar system. And they've got all of these assumptions made. They're just absolutely done with the base work, 350 billion years or whatever they got, whatever it is. It's crazy stuff because they don't have any idea. None is zero. And what came before what's here? If it just all of a sudden came from a big bang, well, what banged? There's really no consistency to the theory whatsoever until you go back to some of what the ancient texts said. And then it starts to make sense. As you will see, stick around or don't. It's up to you. But today I'm going to ask you, please, don't assault NASA for this mission. They never went there. This is all CGI. I hear this all the time. Please don't do that. Don't do that, please. They are technically very, very capable of putting things in space and going to planets and seeing what's coming back and all that. Intellectually, I'm not 100% with them, because when I show you what I have to show you, they should have known this years ago. And it's so spectacular, they can't deal with it. So let's get into it. Now this goes back a year or so ago, and they say Asteroid Bennu is like a bunch of little rubber balls, and it would have sunk into it if it landed on it. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. It depends where it hit, because it's loaded with biology. And I'll show you exactly what this is, I think. I'm almost 100% sure I know what it is. And it is biological. Okay, it's about to hit. This is September 21st, 2023. How Asteroid Bennu got its odd name and other facts. Scientists will study it up close after the sample plummets down to Earth, which is within a day or so. I think I know exactly what it is. I'm going to tell you the chemical composition. And I'm going to tell you the other thing. Everything out in space, it was a body part. I don't care what you have to say about it. It's true. And this right here is Comet 67P. You see all these little things spitting up here? What's going on there? What's this spitting out here or over there? What's this huge thing on it? And what's this structural looking spikes running all around? And what's the architecture of this thing? That's just not normal. That's very, very odd shaped. Well, I can tell you what, it's a tendon enthesis. And here it is right here. Or it could be a hip. Actually, I think it's a hip. I'm sorry. But they're all over the place. And it's just nothing but biology. This is the muscle attachment that runs down to the neck of this hip. And I think it's a hip bone. Now, these little slabs coming up are tendons. You show this to any anatomist, they'll know this. Now, if you landed right there, you're going to sink right in. That's nothing but red dust, because it's red blood eroded and just eroded down. That's all that is dust from this red, bloody, dried out creature. Now, there's also wet blood in here. And you say, oh, Roger, how can you prove that? Because it's boiling off in the sunlight. That's boiled off blood. That's blood boiling out of there. And that's why it's so huge. This is a huge, 500 feet or so across artery. These are just little blood vessels. That's why they're squirting up here when they get hit by the sun just in the right way. And this thing is gigantic. And the blood vessel right there is 500 feet across, 40 meters. And there's about 4 of them in there. That's a lot. That's a very, very, very big blood vessel. And that was the one that was shooting out all that white stuff. And they were all these are biological. Now here's a heart. I don't know if I showed you this yet, but this is a friend of mine, Phil Harris. Unfortunately, Phil passed, but he found this as a challenge. I said, go out and see if you can find some. 15 minutes, that's all. He went out and he found this. He saw this rock, he saw this little red button, and he just hit it, and it just split right there. That's what they do. The plumbing comes off the top, and then you get down into the chambers. That's the red blood area. This is sort of a mix, and this is where you have your vena cava, where you have mostly vein blood. It's not still pumped up with oxygen. Now, that came out of the ground, or actually it was on a riverbank. He just smacked it. And then about an hour or two later, it was this way. It all oxidized and turned black, where all that really red stuff he rubbed his finger through. Now, this is the kind of plumbing you have. These would be pockets up on that asteroid in a Bennu, and that's exactly where they are. That's it. They're going to be like this, only they're going to be pockets, and that's what you see. And this is the size of 67P. That's Raleigh, North Carolina. So this is a big, big, big monster. And the other ones are too. The Bennu is bigger than the Empire State Building. It's taller than the Empire State Building. Now, this is another one. This is called... it'll come back to me, but it's a finger. That whole thing is a finger. This is the grip skin at the end of the finger. This is the tendon, and it locks in right there with a whole bunch of little balls right in the joint. And then the same thing over here, and then that tendon runs down here. That's your knuckle. Comes right over the edge, right here. These are our tendons, and that's your vein. And there's the artery side. And that was a finger. And Avi Loeb from Harvard is studying this. I'm trying to get through to him, and I haven't been successful, as I haven't been successful with any of these people. Because, that is, and I showed this to an anatomist, and he said, absolutely, 100%, that's a finger. He says, it's the fingeriest finger I have ever seen. And this guy does autopsies. So that's Umaru Amaru, Comet Umaru Amaru. And Avi Loeb said he thought it might be a spaceship because of the design of it. No, it's a body part. There was giants and creatures in the skies. That's all there is to it. There's no disputing it. No dispute whatsoever on that now. All right, I would ask them to look for these signatures, these hydrocarbons, carbon, silicon, sodium, and then the states of iron. These are different iron oxides. And this is what I would like them to look at, because I believe that asteroid is a heart. And it will be covered with a lot of iron from red blood, but there'll also be a lot of transition metals. If it was a heart, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of transition metals. Now, this, I don't think they look for the transition metals. I don't know what they look for. This was from Comet 67P. And this was, they said it's all organic, but they just left it at that. And 67P was biological, no question whatsoever. Just as, well, let me show you. All right, now this is Bennu, and it's an asteroid. And they hit the lander down there and popped right off. And they grabbed a bunch of stuff, and they're bringing it back. And I can tell you what it is. It's going to be organic matter. It's going to be biological, and it's going to be primarily related to what's in a heart. This is a heart. And if you look at this very carefully around the edges here, this is actually muscle tissue. Now, they were right there at this thing. These little pieces coming up here, these little straight up pieces, that's what muscle tissue looks like. This is a heart, and so is psyche. And they got them mixed up. They're showing this one is psyche, this one is Bennu. Psyche is basically exactly the same, and it's both of them made out of metal. This right up here, I can guarantee you that is nothing but ferrous oxides. There's red, and then it goes into the yellow, and then they're going to be black too. There's going to be some black in here too, because that's the colors of blood. Now let me show you a heart that was found as a mud fossil heart. Now what I just showed you was Bennu. This is Psyche. And then they say it's just saturated with metals. They call billions of dollars worth of metals. Well, a heart is made out of almost entirely fleshy red muscle, and it's just saturated with blood. So blood is iron oxides and tons of other transition metals. That's what blood is made of. And that's why these are made out of metals. All right, I'm going to leave it at this. These are both hearts, and so is that. And these are this, and it is eroded away. You see this here? This is kind of cheap stuff. The red stuff erodes a lot quicker than this heavy duty stuff, and that's where the heavy duty stuff is starting right here. All right, it's just you got to turn this around to see. So this is on this side. That's all, and it's biology, my friends. It's just biology, and they break right off up in here, and you can see right down into the cavities. You know, one of them will have a valve going this way, the aortic valve going that way, and then the other ones have valves going the other direction. You know, it's kind of interesting. All right, I think I'm going to call it quits here. Here is Bennu, and this is that tissue. I'll show you in a second. And this is the red bloodyish tissue. And here it is right here. Those are those cavities. And here's the bloodyish tissue. And then it gets here. This is the tough stuff. And we can see this on the edge of Bennu. You see, that's the tough stuff right there. But ahead of that is the reddish stuff, and then you come to the valves. And the valves are just quite obvious. Same thing here. And this is just nothing but metals, because that's what's basically in your blood and in the heart. Very, very dense with red blood. And here's one that was found as, I don't know if I showed you this, but this was found as a mud fossil. And a friend of mine, Phil Harris, he just came up and popped it open, and there it is. And then, because there's blood in a lot of rocks. I mean, I've sent them off and had them DNA tested, and they're human too. So, not all of them, but the ones I had. And this is what it looks like from above. These would be cavities out of here. And some of them would be reddish, some of them would be brownish looking, exactly what we see in Bennu here. That's it. Now, they're coming back with this what they captured out of here. And if I'm quite certain I know exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be exactly what's in your body. The same chemistry, probably the same quantities here, you know, of iron. It's going to be primarily iron. And it depends on where they landed. You got black iron, which is the magnetite, and it's the expanded one. And then you got red iron, which still has some red oxygen in there. There's two different states of oxygen. So I'm sure they're going to do extremely detailed analysis of this stuff when they bring it back. When they did Comet 67P, they just did what they could do out there. I don't think they brought any, well, I know they didn't bring anything back. This they're bringing back, so they should really be able to look at it. And like I say, transition metals, iron, basically it's going to be very similar to this as far as these chemicals go. Then you're going to have a whole lot of transition metals, because that's what your blood does. Your blood has to have transition metals in it to carry things around. So you're going to find a ton of them in there. That's what my prediction is, and I'd like to see if it holds up. Okay, my friends, you have to understand metals to understand what happens to meteorites, because they smelt as they come through the atmosphere. It's thousands and thousands of degrees out there, and they're scrubbing through this with their own molecules, and they just heat up like crazy, and all the cheap stuff burns off. When I say cheap stuff, it's the fluids, it's the gases, it's and so forth, and the metals collect and turn into iron meteorites. Now, this is my father. This was a 1936 Ford stainless steel car. They only made 6 of them in 1936. And he was general manager of Wallingford Steel, which they specialized in stainless, super metals, strip steels. They were huge. I mean, it was big, and they had made the best of the best. And my father ran that place, and he knew what he was doing. I can tell you that right now. And I actually worked on that car. I put in the floorboards, and they were made out of red oak. Now, this is an iron meteorite. So let's discuss what that is and what this is. And what's all these little shiny, little flashy looking things? And what would it be if it was a body part? Well, let's examine it closely. All right, in order to understand what I'm talking about, you have to understand chemistry, first of all, and then you have to understand biology, and then you have to understand what the chemistry of biology is. And in your blood, 70% of the iron in your body is in the red blood cells called hemoglobin. Well, hemoglobin actually turns into hematite. It's the red iron, hematite. And then there's magnetite, is the black blood. And I will show you both of those, and you can see both of those on Bennu. Okay, when I'm talking about red and black blood is exactly what I mean. The magnetite, which is the O2 version, is lost in oxygen. It's been expended. It turns black. The O3 version turns red. You see that little hole there and that little hole right there? There's 2 little red spots. Well, guess what? I have one here that's a terrestrial one of these. Exactly the same. It's identical. And that's from NASA, and they call it a meteorite, and I agree with it. That's correct. And these are the same 2 spots. Now, I believe blood ran up through there to the next bone. And this is a regular bone that would, and that's exactly the same style as this bone. This is just the back the same way, and it comes out the little cartilage in the front, and another bone would have wobbled in and out of there. That's ligament attachment and so forth. And so I think it might be the wrist bone, but that's identical to this, literally identical. Now that's NASA. I mean, and you can see the black and the red. Well, that's characteristic of mud fossils and body parts that have been partially cooked coming through space. The black and the red, well, let me show you something. Hold on. I'm pretty sure I showed this before, but just in case. This is red blood coming out of a rock. This is a heart. And the same thing that is Bennu and Psyche, they are also hearts. And they smelted in space, more or less, and have become primarily iron oxides. And when they do that, like if coming through space, this is a gigantic iron meteorite. And guess what it is? It's a lung. Lungs are loaded with iron because that's what blood is iron. This is a lung too. This was terrestrial though. But you can see all the red blood that was in here. All right, and it has all the exact same cavities. You see this hole here? That's probably basically this hole right down in this area, and it sloughed off, or sloughed off this way, whatever. It came through and sort of had a bullet head to it, and that big cavity, I believe, is this cavity here, and it dives down inside it. You see down inside that hole? Let's look down inside this hole, because there's red blood in there. There's still red blood in there. Look. This is it right here. We're in the right here. That's that bar going right in front of it. And there's red blood. There's a red blood hole right there. Going into that, and this could be tested, I'm sure, because they're going to find signatures of red blood. That's what it is, and that's the hole that goes in this one. And they all have because that's all woven into the alveoli, which is all the passageways in your lung that collects all the oxygen. So that is an iron lung. Now, when I say iron, it's not iron completely. It's got all kinds of different metals in it, and I can prove that by just looking at this. You see this? You see all these different crystalline shapes and patterns and colors, basically. And I think I showed you, this is the red blood, and this is the vein blood. Well, I guess maybe I didn't. This is, in my estimation, a liver. Because I don't see all of the holes and so forth like a lung. And I have an asteroid, a meteorite lung here, a couple of them actually. And they have all cavities in them, so you would see a lot more cavities. And so I wouldn't go with lung, and I don't see enough plumbing for a heart. So I am going to have to go with a liver, because that's saturated with metals, and it obviously has red blood and artery blood, vein and artery blood coming in. So, and has all kinds of different, these are all different transition metals. Transition metals have different oxidation states. And that's how your body works. So again, now we're into biology. Here it is right here. Transition metals are compounds and complexes. They carry these different colors depending on the charge on the metal core, the ion, and the number of type and groups of atoms called ligands. So what's attached to that thing? It drags it through your body in this, which is in your blood, transition metals, and then they drop off something with a +3 charge. They give it to somebody, and they give them 3 of something else, and that's how you transfer. They transition items through your body, and they're very important. If you don't have these transition metals, and they're right in the center of the periodic chart. All right, these are special items. All right, you need those to carry your molecules around in your body. And consequently, they can form different colors, like this right here. That's just a mud fossil from Earth, but it's a lung, and all these different cavities of the lung took on different colors because they were in different transition metal states. Anyway, it gets a little complex, but it's not bad. It's kind of interesting. Now, I showed you the lung, the lung and the red blood in that. I showed you the same one I have here, that meteorite. It's just exactly the same as this. This was Phil's heart that was perfectly preserved, just laying there in a riverbank. And he just popped it with a hammer, opens up, and after an hour or so, it turned black like this, because now the oxygen has its way in there. So these things that are coming through space, they're encapsulated. There's going to be raw blood in these things. And it looks like to me there is virtually raw blood in Bennu. And I will show you my meteorite does have raw blood in it. All right, my friends, if this doesn't freak you out, I can't imagine what could. That is a very small iron meteorite. You see the little magnets attached. That just shows it's magnetic, which means it's iron, and you don't get chunks of iron unless they've been smelted, and it's got smelted coming through space. And I can show you that was a lung, and that's why it smelted so well. Now, these things have cavities in them. All right, all biology has cavities, which is your arteries, your veins, and so forth. Now, this up on Bennu, I believe, is an aorta or one of the vena cava or something like that. But you see all this black and this red and so forth. This is they went right up on there. They were right there taking pictures of this. So I have to assume that this is pretty accurate, these colors. Now, I just show you, that's the meteorite I have here that came through space. Now, this is it in a microscope. That is basically the crater on Bennu. Very, very, very similar. This is a lung, but they have the similar plumbing because it's a cavity. Now, if this was all filled up with red dust, which it would be because the arteries sort of empty out and they become very powdery. And that's what they said. When they tried to land, it would have sunk right into that spot right down there. So what we're looking at is two of the same things. Now, I'm going to go get real close with the microscope. We're going to put some water on there and look at it very closely so that we don't get confused. Now, don't forget, this would be the entryway going down into the heart or coming out of the heart, one way or the other. This is really like red blood. Basically, that's about it. And it's just rubble that has sort of filled up the crater. All right. So what are they going to find? They're going to find almost, well, they're going to find all the transition metals. They're going to find iron. And they're going to find exactly the same thing as in blood. And this is the hematite. I'm sorry, the magnetite, the black. And the red is the hematite. And hematite stays real powdery, and the black gets real hard. Okay, so I'm claiming literally there is nothing that's not biology, and some of it is just absolutely stunningly large, such as Bennu and these things that are in space. Now on Earth, this was, well, it is a human lung that preserved perfectly in the Edakara biota style, which Yale claims exceptional preservation in this giant flood that flooded the earth, which is what it says in the ancient text. There was a flood, and that's why it's flat, and it's disassociated from the body because it was in a hot water flood. All of this needs to be very deeply discussed. Now, this is the fabric that coats lungs and organs and so forth. The lung happens to have what they call pleura, very heavy, dense. That lung also has it, this little iron one. But it's mostly burnt off now. But I will show you these white fabrics that are in there. Now, I claim that's a meteorite, a stony one. That's also a meteorite. You see the magnetic. Those are all meteorites. This is not a meteorite, but it is a hair follicle from a giant creature. I don't know what kind it was, but that's the erector pili muscle attachment. That's the root coming down. These two are the blood supplies. This is the sebaceous gland, and that's the root, the hair shaft. We'll look at this a little. I'll put an anatomical on it, but anyway, I'm showing stuff that's very legitimate, and these things were astronomically large. Don't forget the different types of materials. Now we're going to look at the heart and these other things in the microscope, and I find that quite enjoyable. Okay, we're going to put a little water on this in a second. But you see these white fibers? Those are the same white fibers I showed you on that other lung that didn't get burnt up. Well, the rest of the stuff, the bloody part, the gooey part, burnt up and turned into that scale. Now, that's one of the orifices that goes down into the lung. Again, this is a lung. Now, Bennu is not a lung, but damn near, well, it's the same kind of plumbing. It's plumbing. You see, there's a very little difference, and the materials, there's very little difference to that too. Now I'm going to put some water on there, and it makes a big difference when you put the water on, because this is dry as a bone. I'm going to put some water on. All right, it's wet now, and it's a little bit shiny, but you can see it's quite obvious that that's an artery passageway or some passageway for blood, right? Because this is a lung. They have all kinds of plumbing through the lung. And some of it's red, and some of it turned black. Now, the little white fabric here is kind of shiny. It's hard to see. But you can see there's white fabric here and there. Very sparse amount of it, not much. You see the little flecks of white? You can see it better where it's not wet. Let me get these magnets off of here. You see the little flecks of white? That's part of the fascia, pleura, that coats the lung. It makes it into like a rubber bag. And all of that stuff is all, you know, places where the blood ran through the lung. I'll get this one off too. That's what this was a lung. That's why it's magnetic. It came through space, and it cooked off. See all those little holes? Those are all alveoli. It's got, and I know there's blood in here because I did a catalase test on it with hydrogen peroxide, and it bubbled. So there's still so the enzymes are still in there from the biology, and they could test these other things with a little catalase test. Depends where they picked it up from, but they should be able to get a catalase reaction. All right, don't forget, this is the iron meteorite that came through space, and it still has some of these little white fibers on it. You can see the red and the black. Now, I'm going to remove this, and right below it here is the lung that I showed you that was from Earth. And you see it has the same red and black, and it has those fibers and so forth. And this is what I was just showing you right over here. I have to keep the lights low so you can see it, but here it is right here. Those are those two, the iron one and the terrestrial one. Now, I have several other things here that I also claim to be meteorites, and this one here, and I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's got some very interesting stuff. And this one here is a giant fingertip, and this I can almost 100% prove if you will take the time to look at it. Did I show you this? I think, I don't know if I did or not. Let me turn the lights on. I know I claimed to you that this was a hair follicle, which it is, and it's a lot bigger than mine. That is the erector pili muscle attachment right there. You see it? There it is right there. Now, what is this? This is the root, and that's how they grow. They grow down and then come back up through the shaft at the top. Up there. Now, what is this? That's the sebaceous gland right there. You see it? It oils up the hair. I believe that's what it does. And this is just like the sheathing. Everything has a sheathing around it. You see this white sheathing? And then you have, at the bottom, you have the vein and artery. You see the black? Well, here's the thing. This one is completely what I could transitions. It's called nucleophilic transition. It's completely changed into whatever the chemistry was, and it completely invaded it. Just like this heart. This is a heart. Okay? It's all completely silicates. That was the aorta. Right over here was another one of the major arteries or whatever coming up. That's the ventricle wall. All right, and it all transitioned into silicates. So it depends on where these things are. Sometimes they'll have a lot of different stuff. You just find all the blood will still be in them, and sometimes the blood's gone. It's like Phil's heart. It's just completely loaded with blood. He came up and saw a little red spot like that and hit it, and the whole thing popped off, and you could see all the plumbing right under there. And it does that. There's some kind of a seam there that is just like glued on the top of all the plumbing, you know. You call the plumber, he'll put a whole new top on your heart. So we should be able to see the, well, I'm going to show you some more things in the microscope because I kind of like doing it. All right, so we saw the lungs. We'll take a look at the fingertips because this is a terrestrial fingertip. It's identical. They are absolutely identical. They have that little hook. The artery, I mean, the veins don't blow out. You see that? That's a vein, and that's a vein. That's a vein, and that's a vein. They don't blow out. But the red blood side blows completely out or drains out. This one exploded coming through space. It was wet. That's the only way it would explode like that. It was wet. And coming through space, it just popped right off. All right, that's a stony meteorite. And you can see this here. And I'm going to show you this in this one. It has the same investment. And that's like, I believe, well, I know it's a tendon-ish investment. You see this right here? That's the central tendon. And they like glue in. We'll look at that in the microscope. Very interesting stuff. You see that round spot right there? Perfectly round. That one there, this one just blew off. These are tendons, so you can do all this kind of stuff with your fingers. And this one has exactly the same stuff. You see the red blood just leaked out on this one. But this was flat in the flood too. This was on Earth stuff. The Earth stuff was basically all flat on one side. The stuff coming through space is all kind of different shapes. Like this has no flat side to it. And it actually had literally red blood coming out of there when I first popped it open. Crack, you know, I take them apart a little bits and pieces. And it still has the vein and the artery inside, which would you'd call that basalt, I'm sure. What it was in the beginning, I don't know, but it has the same sort of investment as that, as this one here does down at the bottom. You see it? Maybe it was another fingertip. Je ne sais pas. I do not know. But it had some serious amount of tendons. That's a tendon flap, and it was invested here. Right into there. That brought that tendon, locked it in, just like it would lock it in one of these. I believe. This is a little bit of conjecture, but I think I'm on the right path. Well, I know this was blood, and no question. I put water on it, it'll come right back. It'll rehydrate into red blood. I guess I'll do that. The blood is exceptionally excellent at preservation. You see this little line right here? That's another tendon. I would say this probably in a fingertip, but it's kind of malformed now. I don't know how you can make any judgment about it, but we'll look at it in a microscope. Okay, once again, we got to do the chemistry, the anatomy, the whole 9 yards. What is these? These are tendon entheses. And what is an enthesis? It means where it anchors these straps so that it can pull your muscles and do all the things tendons do. Now, there's different styles of tendon. There's flat laying ones, which are a ponerosis type of tendons, and then there's the fibery tendon that comes in bundles. Now, let's look at what they actually look like. Hold on a second. All right, this is a tendon strap. And this is the insertion point, and the ball grows inside somewhere and anchors it. Now, they're claiming that this is as it grows and grows, it turns into all these crystals in the center. And yes, I do agree with that in some cases, not all of them. A lot of them have all kinds of different patterns. They have crisscrosses inside. Some of them have eggshell looking just like shells and so forth. Some of them have a central core with like really heavy-duty chert around the outside. I have examples of all of those, but this is what I believe this one here is. We're going to look at it in a microscope. All right, that is the tendon I just showed you, the stony one that I say is a meteorite. Now, I'm going to come right down close to it. I got to focus it in. You see this? This is very similar to what I showed you down here that they claim to be what is inside of a tendon. And I agree, that is a heavy, heavy, heavy anchor tendon. This is going to really, that's locked in position very well. And it still has the red blood in it. There's still a little red blood. If I put a little moisture on it, you might be able to see it stand out a little better. It usually hydrates really quickly. You see it? How red it is already? And then there's going to be some black spots, which because you got black and red blood. So anyway, that's the anchor. Okay, get ready. This is that meteorite I claim, and this is the red blood spot. I'm going to put it in the microscope with a little water on. You see it rehydrate just like that. And this is the one I showed you with the tendon emplacement. It sure looks like that. Let's just go with that for now. And let's see, was there blood in this meteorite? And I say yes, absolutely. And there's where it was. And it will rehydrate very, very well, very quickly. All right, what I'm going to do is go from the red to the black, because there's always red and black blood. Now here it is in a microscope, and this isn't wet yet. I'm going to put a little water on in a second, but if I move from the red gooey spot up to the black spot. There it is right there. They always have this type of transition between the black and the red somewhere. And this happens to be right at the junction of the tendon. So if we come out here, we're seeing just nothing but red blood. And I'll put a little water on here, and it just slurps right into red blood. You see it? That's the red blood. And that's where it butts up to where it turned into the black area. And it still has some of these white fibers in there as well. But this is the one, I believe this came through space. It's magnetic, and there's no other reason I can think of for it to burn off a lot and then get all the way down to here and be able to see all those crystals. That's the only way it could have happened I could think of. All right, I'm claiming that that is a meteorite, that is a meteorite, and this is not a meteorite, but it is the same type of a fingertip as this from a smaller terrestrial giant. Now, this has some magnetism to it. It's iron, and that right there is the artery, and that's the vein. And it just transitions because it's almost into a smelted state. And all of this stuff is burnt off basically down to where it burnt enough down to where you could see the tendons locked in here and there. That's my take on this. That this was scourged off. And the same thing here. Now I broke this piece off that was laying on here just to see, because it had a seam, and this one also has a seam. I could break that off. And they lay in layers, these tendons. They're in the straps. And that's where I showed you the blood in there. It's very, very obvious, and it butts right up to the black blood. So that's that meteorite. And that's the only reason I could think of that we'd be able to see all of these tendon emplacements. And the reason they blow out of here is because they're all wet blood. You can see the red blood in there. I showed you the red blood is in there, and there's no reason that they're never going to be flat on the surface like that ever. Now, here's the same thing in this giant fingertip. These tendon emplacements are virtually identical. You see it right here? And this one right here, this one cooked off as well. And that is right where the main tendon comes down and in places. All right, I think I showed you these circles here, and this one exploded because it was attached to the red blood side. All the wet blood exploded off. So let's look at this in a microscope. And again, that's going to be one of these really heavy-duty tendons. Same as that one. All right, this is the fingertip from underneath, and there's that real red bloody spot. Well, not red bloody, but it is kind of red and bloody, but it has all that scrappiness to it, and then it comes down from there down to here further, and eventually locks into the rest of the fingertip. Look at how bloody that is. That's just saturated with blood. You see that? And that's what blew out on the side of this fingertip. That's the side that blew out. You see, it's this side right here. That's the side that exploded. Now, let's take a look at the fabric on the top, which is the top of the tendons where they run. That's the cord. Let's take a look at that. All right, don't forget, we're on top of this fingertip. And it's basically the same fingertip as this one here, only this was terrestrial. Now, we're looking down at the strap, which came up to attach to one of the tendons. You don't see that on this because it didn't come through space and get cooked. But we can see, here it is right here. Now let me go up into the microscope. You see that? That's what that strap is made of, is all of these little pockets so that it can stretch and move. It's got to be stretchable and movable. And this is the same thing as those. Is this. All right, so that's where it's attached right there. Now, remember what you're looking at. Let me back it off of here, and you'll see it a little better. If maybe not. Let's see. Got to turn the lights up a little bit. And focus it in. It's kind of hard to make out a lot of detail, but that whole area is where it's just got cooked off. It came running down here and then went down inside or over to here, whatnot. I'm not sure. It's kind of obscure, to be perfectly honest with you. I can't make heads or tails of it from, well, actually you can. This stuff here is the fabric. And it makes the connection. So it probably came over here, and the ball was right under there somewhere. And there was another one over here. But it's pretty well cooked off now. And you see it cooked out. It could have been right here. I don't know. It's somewhere in here where it came down and latched in. Let's just go with that. All right,
Kate,
this is the
as an earth
mission.
science, an expert on how our planet works in climate, can you tell us how this asteroid mission, the samples we return, might impact how we understand life on Earth, how it evolved, and how climate issues now might be involved?
Yeah, so this asteroid Bennu may record some of the earliest history of our solar system. So scientists are looking at it to help us understand planet formation and the origins of water and carbon, which led to life here on Earth.
That's incredible.
That is incredible. And, Kate, I know you've been to several launches. That's our typical bread and butter here at NASA. But this is more of a homecoming. How does that feel to you?
It's great. The environment here is so nice, being with the team and thinking about, this spacecraft launched 7 years ago. And now there's all this amazing science just around the corner.
Can you believe it? The team has really been working hard.
All right, I'm just going to go and finish this up now, but hopefully someone will be in contact with me. I think I have some pretty good evidence. And, they made a lot of assumptions that are not based on fact. I present assumptions sometimes, but they're based on something that I can say is fact. All right, organic compounds, clay, they're going to find out this. The materials that I said make it up. It's going to have a lot of transition metals. It's going to have a lot of iron in different oxidation states. And, it's biology of life. And primarily blood, because it's in the heart area. And that's almost exclusively bloody, wet compounds.